This is From Maine with Love, an Allagash brewing podcast where we talk about beer, our community here in Maine, and things that generally make us happy. I'm Jeff Pillet-Shore, Marketing Director, and I'm joined here today by Zoe Malia, our Sustainability Coordinator, Claudette Ndayininahaze, Co-founder and Executive Director of In Her Presence, and Mary Faulkner, the Chief Impact Officer of In Her Presence. Because Zoe and I have had the honor of working so closely with In Her Presence over the years, we thought this would make for a special and fun conversation to share the work that they've been doing and how honored we've been to support them over the years.
That's the voice of Jeff Pillet-Shore, our marketing director here at Allagash. And it's for a reason, because I'm actually not on this episode. And it's not just because I was sick, which I actually was. It's because we are talking to In Her Presence, which is just a really inspiring organization that works with immigrant women here in Portland, Maine, and beyond, and who we've been lucky enough to form a pretty deep relationship with through a bunch of different people on staff. And so Jeff and Zoe Malia, our sustainability coordinator, actually have both had really cool, interesting, in-depth experiences with In Her Presence in just such unequivocally positive ways. And it was a really cool one, honestly, for me to hear secondhand, just because, I knew some of these stories, but hearing it from Claudette, from Mary, from Jeff and Zoe is just, it has a separate sort of power that, you couldn't get any other way. So if you want to hear more about the relationship between beer and helping immigrant women find their place and thrive here in Portland, Maine, then this is the episode for you.
Carrying on the tradition that Brett has bravely set for us, we always like to start off with a little bit of an icebreaker, a little bit of a secret question. So these are prepared for me. It's actually like double blind. And so I will start off with a question for Claudette. What is your favorite soup to make?
So my favorite soup is a mix of different veggies, carrots, spinach, squash, onions, all those veggies together, they make the beauty and beautiful soup.
Oh my gosh, I can picture that right now. That is amazing. I think we now have a new meal idea for the next time we get together. And Zoe, would you like the honor of the next question?
Yes, absolutely. Mary, hi. Hi. What was the subject of the favorite photo you've ever taken?
Oh, that's a tough one because I like to take pictures, a lot of pictures. I took pictures of all of you just a second ago before we started. My favorite picture, the first one that popped into my mind, is a picture of my dog. Mm-hmm. He looked really cute with one ear flipped back over next to his favorite toy.
What's his name?
Honus.
Oh, it's a good name.
Yeah.
Wow, is that a baseball reference?
It is.
Oh,
Honus
wow.
Wagner. You got it.
Oh,
that's funny.
That is much better than I even imagined. Yep. That is fantastic. Well, on that note, with the ice broken, as I mentioned, we've had the honor of knowing you and working with you for many years, and I think where I wanted to just start the conversation is really just understanding how when you want to introduce someone new, someone who isn't familiar with In Her Presence, to the work that you're doing, how do you talk about it? Can you sort of introduce us to and help us understand what you're striving to do within Her Presence?
So when we want to introduce someone to our work, first, I think we meet face to face, because in person, I think, is more attracting. Of course, during the pandemic, we have been doing that on Zoom, but I think in person is more attractive. Then we set up the meeting and we talk about what we do. And there is an engagement, I think, of the passion we have for our work and the impact we are making in the community to see, and the interest from the person we are talking with.
to add on to what Claudette said, when I am asked by my friends, what kind of work do you do? I tell them I work with immigrant women. I work for an organization that empowers immigrant women and families to speak English, find jobs, and connect with the community in Maine so they feel comfortable here, because this is where they're going to live and make it their home.
That's incredible. When you first started, and I think if you can tell us the origin story of In Her Presence, how did it start? Who started it? And what was the need that you first saw that you wanted to meet?
So I actually start the organization. And that was my idea because back home, I used to work with people, to support people. I was I was a Girl Scout. Maybe you didn't know that. So I was a Girl Scout.
It's all making sense now.
Yeah, I was a Girl
just learned
Scout.
that.
I was a Girl Scout. And also I was involved with Heineken Company during going to the market, building a relationship and client satisfaction. And from that, I learned how to support people. And when I came here, it was so hard to be supported because you leave everything behind, all the food, your job, your family, everything is behind. There is a collective loss you have and you carry on when you come here. And arriving here, it was so hard. I didn't have anyone to hold my hands and to coach me, to show me where I need to go, all the pathway to the integration. And then I realized someone needs to stand up for others. And I did, but I didn't want to do it as someone coming from Burundi, only one community. I needed to be inclusive because where I was working, I was getting anyone knocking at the door. And also having the women coming here, seeing single women coming, women having children, husband. But I felt the woman was kind of the pilot and having everything on her shoulder. And then we decided to initiate the In Her Presence, dedicated for women. And I was with Mickey Bondo from DRC Congo.
Wow.
So when I joined In Her Presence 5 years ago, In Her Presence, the main focus was just English classes 1 day a week. And I was inspired by Claudette's story where she had been an executive at Heineken for 17 years and arrived here and could only find a job in housekeeping. And of course, that was such a surprising revelation to me, and yet not that surprising, because if you don't speak English, you can't show your skills as an executive. So as someone who has a background in teaching English and in the business world, I found it just incredibly motivating that there was a whole group of immigrant women living in Maine already and coming all the time that were in similar circumstances. So since that time, In Her Presence has grown significantly. We have classes now almost every day of the week, except for Sunday. And we've developed a lot more programming, and I am honored to work with Claudette full time.
Yeah, one thing I can add, thank you, Mary. One thing I can add is, so when we began the organization, we didn't picture the language. As I say, it was so hard to navigate the system, the complexity of the system here. Yeah. Then we explored the yoga class back in 2015. And from that, we were 12 women. And from that setting up and platform transcended the language because that's what we were lacking, everybody who were doing the yoga class.
That story is so amazing because it's like a perfect microcosm of the ways in which In Her Presence is so much about language, but so much more than just language. You know, it's like, how does yoga fit into this thing? Isn't it just job training, or isn't it just? But it's so much bigger than that.
Yes,
Yes.
that's true.
We've taken a whole person approach because obviously, you know, people don't succeed in their jobs if they don't feel good, if they're not healthy, if they don't know how to access services or just even get around the city. There are a million things that can keep somebody from being successful in their job. And if you don't take time to address each one of those things, if someone doesn't help people figure that out, they're never going to be the best possible employee. So we have developed a really personal, individualized approach to our training programs that we've had a lot of success with and that women seem to respond to. These deep personal relationships create In Her Presence feeling as a family. It's a family for me, and we think of everyone who participates as members of a family. So, do all things with love, I think.
And what we have seen, most of organization, they do address the basic needs, but they don't go beyond and create an independence for someone. And that for us, for In Her Presence, that's our goal. How do we sustain, how someone can come, learn English, but also create short, mid, and long term for that person to succeed in their life. So they can advocate for themselves and for their families, but also for the community. That's, I think, the goal. And when you see our program are interconnected, as Mary said, it's the whole person. They are interconnected because when you just come to our program, there's the language first, of course, because if you don't have the language, you don't communicate. But there is the language. But there are also those backbone program created based on the needs for someone like the child care. If you don't have anyone taking your child, how are you going to have time and have the language? So they are that leadership. So we have a leadership and career program to see how we can boost the leadership for our women and family so they can know how to be independent and sustain and integrate.
It's really wonderful. You know, I've known both of you for a couple of years, but to just hear you talk about it in this setting, and these are things that I get to see you do every day and get to work with you. But hearing these stories and these connections is really incredible. And one of the things, Mary, that you said is once you connect within her presence, you can never get away, which is so incredibly true. You know, I think many people at Allagash can relate with that. Once, you know, we meet Claudette, Mary, or any other members from In Her Presence, we just want to keep connecting and keep learning from each other. And I've learned so much from you both. But I would love to just hear how did you initially actually get connected with Allagash? I'm not sure what that first connection was or how it happened. Claudette's laughing. Sounds like it was probably a funny story.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I think I was the first one who came looking for Allagash. And I, of course, as I said from the beginning, I was an executive at Heineken Company, producing beer and soft drink. And that was my dream. And when I arrived here, I thought I was going to join again the Heineken Company or even any beer company because I had those skills. Unfortunately, as Mary said, I applied for many, many jobs and didn't get any feedback. I was shocked and discouraged. Then I took the housekeeping, of course, that time. But around the classes, I had someone working at WEX who was actually doing volunteer work with assisting Mary in her class, Rebecca. And she connected with Jeff and introduced by an email. So time went by, and then actually I said, Jeff set up the meeting, and I came here. And that time, of course, I was looking for a job, but they said they didn't have any job. And I was like, okay. So when I was looking at your website, I saw that, you are involved in the community. So I turned my search for a job to how in her presence can connect with Allagash. And that's what happened that day. It was April 15th, 2018. And it was the deadline, the last day for the deadline for that grant. I went back to my office, applied for that grant, and we got it. And that was the first thing, how we connected.
It's a great story.
As you think about what it was like working with us, I'm curious, what advice do you have for other organizations who might think, I want to work within her presence, or I want to work with another organization that does somewhat similar work? If you're a company, how should that company think about working with you or organizations like you?
I think first, I have seen through Allagash, there are people who are engaged, people committed, people who want to do the work. And I can see you. I can see that time, Celine was not in the meeting, who is the human resources manager. She was not in the meeting, but she came to see me because she heard that I have been with Hanneke. And that was my first connection, I think, with her. And we kind of bond together. And I think some advice for other organizations, how they can do is being engaged, not only having, just giving money, it's good, it's not bad, but how do you benefit both for the partnership? How do you go beyond, as I said, going beyond the basic need? So how do you go beyond the financial support? And then you engage your employees, you engage yourself, and then you engage even the whole community to do the work.
Claudette's pointing at me now. So I agree with Claudette that connecting and developing a deep relationship is the best way to go long term. I would add that a successful relationship for working with any nonprofit that works with immigrants is simply to know that your organization has a strong curiosity and desire to learn about people from other cultures, because it's that curiosity and open-mindedness and acceptance of differences that helps us overcome any potential miscommunications or misconceptions that inevitably arise in any human interactions. And since all of our organizations or companies, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit, have people, there will be those kinds of things that happen. So curiosity, open-mindedness, willingness to learn. If you have those things, you want to bring more people on board, I encourage you very much to reach out to any organization that works with immigrants and get to know them, get to know about their culture so that you have a deep understanding with them. I assure you that it can not only benefit your bottom line, but it can also just enrich the experience that you and your employees have as an organization.
I love the acceptance. And to be honest, I can tell you how Mary has been brave to raise the understanding and the awareness and bridge that gap, that cultural gap. It's not easy. It's not easy. It takes the courage and it takes the passion to do the work and to connect and to see how you can support the people. And if you don't have that milestone, having that passion, you are not going to work with immigrants because they have a lot. They have a lot going on. They are struggling, and sometimes it doesn't depend on them. It's because all the pressure, the system, everything they are going through. So you need to be patient, and that's how you can succeed. Be involved. Come, build. Have a coffee, have a tea with someone. Build that relationship first and trust. And that is going to bridge all the relationship and knowledge and being together so you can succeed.
I think everything you said just completely resonated with me. Learning, just thinking about my experience working within her presence. There were times where I was afraid to make a mistake or I might say the wrong thing. And it can hold you back. And I think that's what's holding a lot of people, maybe businesses back, is you're afraid to jump in and because you don't want to mess it up. But I think what you just said is, have a coffee. Like that is so simple and it can make a really big impact for everyone. And ask questions and be curious and be okay with making a mistake because it will happen. Like Mary just said, it will happen, guarantee it. But it's understanding how to navigate it and just learning more about each other is such a beautiful piece and part of community that I think you have been able to foster through In Her Presence. And some of the most memorable times that I've spent within Her Presence have been just listening to what you have to say, what the women and their families are going through, to learn more about the system. You actually walked us through the legal system and the challenges that immigrants and asylum seekers and all the different categories that there are just here in the state of Maine and in the U.S. And it's learning that just was shocking to me and eye-opening. It's not something that is by any means easy to navigate. So yeah, thank you for educating us. It's incredible.
I remember Zoe. I remember the first time we placed our first intern 3 years ago. I got a feedback from saying that, she has a fear to supervise their intern because you felt that you could offend him, maybe into the communication or into everything you were working together. But I remember when we sat together, then express yourself. Then we had compromise and see how you can do that. See how you can get feedback from the intern, from also your employee, how you kind of bridge that relationship. At the end, it worked. And the result was to hire him as giving him a position. Mm-hmm. That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. So this is the internship that we worked on within Her Presence. Was it really 3 years ago? Because I feel like that's just incredible. Yeah. Where a member from the In Her Presence community came on board and we built an internship around it and I got to be the mentor. And yeah, like Claudette just said, I was so afraid of messing it up. I was like, you want me to do this? And I'm just going to mess it up. And Claudette took time out of her day to come and to speak with me and to talk to me about trust and building relationships, and that's really at the core of of this. That's really what matters most, and to learn from one another. And I learned so much through that experience that I'm so grateful for. And I got to get a wonderful coworker out of it as well. That was just incredible. So yeah, thank you for taking time to make that happen. So that was great.
And I think it was not only on your side, Zoe.
Mm-hmm.
It was also on the side of the intern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because as we said, yes, the mainstream community needs to take that step of increasing awareness and understanding of the immigrant community. But also the immigrant community needs to do the same. So there's a common space, an intersection where we can meet together to build the community together. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And it worked because we were also coaching the intern to see, because the fear you had, being afraid, he was also afraid of the unknown, the other culture, the other employees, because I think he was the only one in your department as an immigrant. So I think we worked on both sides, but the result was positive.
Yeah, absolutely. In any relationship, right? You want both parties or all parties to be working. Yeah. If it's just one party, it's probably not going to go all that well. So you're totally right. It was incredible, I think, for both of us. And to do that work on both sides was really impactful.
Could you tell us a little bit more about groups of women that you worked on? And this would really be sort of a question both for Zoe and Claudette and Mary. There's a group inside Allagash of women and non-binary individuals who then worked with partners from In Her Presence to sort of learn how to communicate and speak English better. And I'm just curious to hear how that worked from your side, Claudette, and how that worked from your side, Zoe.
Absolutely. So we were fortunate enough to have volunteers from Allagash join one of my career development classes at the point at which they were ready to do interview practice. So if you're not familiar with looking for a job in a foreign country, I will just tell you that it's different everywhere you go, from one country to the next. And it's quite different for our students from Africa who come here to learn the style of interview and the expectations that we have as Americans. It's something that it isn't intuitive at all. You do have to be taught the formalities of how to behave in an interview and what's an appropriate response to questions that you can expect at every single interview. So, of course, we build this practice into our programming. And some ladies from Allagash came. We were online. They joined us on Zoom. And we practiced. And everybody was worried, very worried in the beginning. There were many emails exchanged about what questions were going to be asked and what would be expected from both sides. So we nailed down the questions. I practiced with my students. I am pretty sure that Allagash practiced on their side too. And then we came together and I tried to make everyone feel comfortable. But of course, it's on Zoom. So I sent everyone into breakout rooms and then I just prayed that everything would go okay because I can't see them or hear them all at the same time anymore. I can only jump in and out of their virtual experiences. But it was lovely. It worked out so, so well. We got my immigrant women in face of someone that they had never met before, but that they understood to be a practice employer. They loved it, loved a chance to talk to someone who was a real businesswoman, unlike myself, who's just a teacher. They absolutely loved it. They loved just the opportunity to talk to another American-born person who could respond to them as proof that their English works, right? Oh, I tried this, and they understood me, was one of the comments that I made. Yeah, like, yes, of course they understood you. But it's amazing how many people, even who have higher levels of English, aren't able to make casual connections with Americans outside a classroom environment. So to have the opportunity to speak to other people was really exciting. And then we came back together as a group. We talked about what was said, and we had some people from the Allagash volunteers shared their experiences as well, and then gave a ton of advice to my students about things to help them not feel nervous when they go to an interview, or something interesting or funny that happened to them in an interview. So be prepared for anything. But all kinds of real world experience that I'd never even thought of including came out of that discussion. So it was just an unbelievably wonderful, rich exchange of ideas. And my students learned so much from it. We were so, so grateful, and we would love to do that again.
We would love to do it again. It was the women on our team, the folks, they were raving about it. After each session, I had people come up. That was incredible. I loved it so much. I learned so much with, so-and-so that I was working with. We really connected and hit it off. So it was such, for both sides, so special. And I think also from our perspective, it was so eye-opening as well, thinking about, oh my God, job interviews are the worst. They're terrible, right? And so we're kind of all commiserating together. And in this really pretty vulnerable space, you're putting yourself out there, and that's scary. But being able to do it in that classroom setting with other women was so supportive. And I just was really, really inspired by your students. A lot of them, were at home. I got to meet and see some of their children, which I was just like, this is so fun. But also, I would imagine so challenging. Like, they're here to learn, they're here to get a job, and they're practicing these skills that they can go out into the community and apply them. So it was also just, acknowledging that challenge as a woman and taking care of children or doing whatever they're doing, but also seeing no, I'm here to do this, and I'm gonna work really hard. And it was really special to just support just in any way we could, even if it was just listening, answering any questions we could. So that's something we would absolutely love to continue to do. For sure. I
think we just made Allagash podcast history. I think we actually just booked a project on the podcast.
I think so. Yeah, we just committed for sure.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
For the next 20 minutes, we will schedule meetings, everyone.
Yeah. And it was really fun at the end, too, because we all got to meet in person.
That's right. That's right.
We did a tour of the brewery, and it was a blast. And your students had amazing questions, and it was so much fun for all of us. So, yeah, I think completing that was really great, and I would love to continue that work. And I know a lot of people here would as well.
Yeah. I remember you were eating, when we came here, we were eating together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, we shared a meal
was-
together. And it was really special.
I've been privileged over the years to hear different stories from different women that you've helped. I'm just curious, is there any standout experience that you can think of somebody whose life in her presence was able to impact in some very specific way? I think hearing those stories is so extraordinary to recognize that the degree of fundamental challenges that folks are going through. And I'm wondering if you could tell us one of those stories yourself.
Wow.
We have many stories. Have many stories. And for me, the women leadership is not happening only when you get maybe a high position. I think for me, it's happening from the beginning when the woman is in touch with in her presence. And that's how the fire starts and begins, because they get to understand, oh, I can do more. I am not limited. And that, I think, motivation is giving the energy to the people to see how they can thrive and not survive in their community. So we place people in different jobs. Last year we placed 38 people into high position.
That's incredible.
Oh my
Jinx.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have different, the community initiative we create around the language, for example. It's also empowering the woman and showing them the pathway they can do. Like in her kitchen, we were talking about food. So we take the skills of our women into the cooking and nutrition. And then we bring that to another level so they can use it and say, oh, I can do my own restaurant in the future.
So, Jeff asked who we can think of that we have impacted, and there are so many people. But there are a few that really stand out in my mind. We had 5 years ago a group of ladies who started taking English classes they were located at Portland Public Library, and they had their kids in a separate room, and we had some volunteers teaching English with them. And these women didn't speak any English at all when they came here, and couldn't take classes anywhere else because they had young children that they couldn't leave alone. And so they were this tiny group. And I remember when that tiny group got moved on up, kept getting moved up, and it got moved up to me eventually. Mm-hmm. And I was so excited because these women had seen their own progress. They'd gone from 0-level speakers, and I was teaching the quote-unquote advanced class, which isn't all that advanced, honestly. At that point, it wasn't. But they were making big progress. And I can tell you that today, I can think of 2 of those women in particular. One of them is a student at SMCC, getting a degree in social work. And another of them, you have met recently, is working for Portland Trails as an intercultural coordinator. And she is giving public presentations in English all the time. These women were, you could tell then with no English, smart, motivated, hardworking. And those ladies, and this is not at all uncommon, but they worked jobs at night so they could study during the day, really around the clock over the last 5 years to try to improve themselves. And while there are many places in Portland that people can take English, and there are lots of organizations that are helping people, I would say that Claudette is right. What In Her Presence really has done for our women is to make them believe that they have something to offer, to help them think about and realize what it is they want to do and believe that it's possible. Changing what someone believes matters so much. If you don't believe that you can achieve your goals, it doesn't matter if your English is good or not. You have to believe and understand, that you can do it to just, keep going. So I really love our leadership and empowerment piece. I think that's the magic, the secret sauce.
Yes.
I shouldn't be talking about it on a podcast.
Giving it away. It's incredible even for me to hear it because I didn't know where that story was going. I've now met one of those women that you're talking about who's working with Portland Trails, and you're talking about somebody who's literally transforming a community now through her own work. And to think of where she was 5 years ago, but that you saw not even just that potential, but who she was, sort of trapped in the trappings of a society that she wasn't from, trying to figure that out, and that you enabled her to be in this place that she could make her community better is pretty extraordinary.
It's so exciting. It's so gratifying, and that's what motivates us every day to do this work. It's really, really wonderful, and I think I'm really honored to be a part of it.
We are blessed to have you, Marie.
That's not what I meant.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, Mary and Claudette, thank you so much for your time today and for all the work that you're doing in our community. We feel extremely honored at Allagash to know you just as individuals, but also to work with you and in her presence and all of the wonderful members that you support as well.
I do still remember, Claudette, what those first conversations were like. And honestly, your both patience and persistence with us as we sort of figured ourselves out as an organization to be able to sort of overcome those first, what seemed scary in retrospect wasn't that big of a deal steps, but they were intimidating at first. And it's thanks in part to your persistence and that we were able to get to where we are now. And we're better as an organization and people as a result. So
yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you. And we are so grateful for everything you do, contribution, involvement, engagement, dedication. We love you.
We do love you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Woo!
This has been an Allagash Brewing production. If you have something you'd like us to talk about on the show, send us a message at podcast@allagash.com.